We've got amazing examples of entrepreneurial success here, and I'm going to start on Jim Dolan, because I find it amazing that Jim took an established career that he had in investment banking, and you were with Rupert Murdoch, and those are combinations that don't necessarily lead someone to strike out on their own. So I'm curious how you got to that point where you said you got to go start your own company.
Can I have a microphone, or do I just shout?
Oh, shout.
Okay. I couldn't find one on the floor, so. Well, I don't know that there's a clear path to what I did, how I started, where I am today, but it's ego is a lot of it. I saw people doing things, I thought I could do it better. That's really part of it. Working with Rupert the way I was able to do. I was with News Corp for 12 years, so I got a chance to see somebody who's really innovative and who thinks differently, and I could watch him work through problems and watch him encounter situations that were new to him and watch him innovate. So a lot of it is just sort of putting things together, and then opportunity came my way from time to time, and I would take the jump. Rupert had an idea that anything could be done if you were brave and smart and had the ability to take chances, and that really became part of a lot of us who worked at News Corporation. The turnover is fairly high there. You either want to become like Rupert and you are expelled from the company, which kind of happened to me, I was divested, or you stay with the family and you're there for a long, long time, which did not happen to me. So the experience of watching him build things from scratch, watching him take chances, led me to try some things that did not work. And the first thing did not work. The second thing worked a little bit better. This is the third thing now. This is my third company. So I've had chances to make mistakes and to learn from them. It's the freedom to take chances. We don't have children. That's been part of it. So I have been dead broke. I never filed for bankruptcy, but I've been insolvent before. It didn't kill me. It was kind of liberating in some ways. So you try things with more panache after that, because you realize that, what the heck, I've already survived once going broke, and in fact I was broke again another time. It's okay. I made the rounds of all my creditors and said, I will pay you back someday. I don't know how, and I did. It took years in some cases. And after a while you discover that the people who invested in you or lent to you the first few times are always there for you if you have the right character and if you sort of are open with them. So it's not a tidy story with me. I can't say, aha, these three things led to it. It's just, what the heck.
Vince, you had a child at the point when you launched, and you also had a quite comfortable job in government in Ohio. So, you know, we have a great quote on you in the book about your wife gnashing her teeth. I love that quote. So why'd you take the leap?
Well, I'm living proof that government doesn't work. I was the youngest commissioner for mental health for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and had reached this pinnacle of wonderfulness until I found out that nobody cared what I said, what I did, what I wanted to do, and the bureaucracy was so untenable that it just didn't work. And so any opportunity to privatize government, guys, we've got to vote for that. It's awful. I got a call from the governor of the state of Ohio, Jim Rhodes, who, those of you who knew him or knew about him know that he was one of the most entrepreneurial governors in the Midwest. He had one phrase, it's all about jobs. It's all about jobs. And we hear that today, and it is all about jobs. If people are not working, you get no tax revenue and you can't provide any services. And he asked me to look at the mental health and mental retardation system in the state of Ohio, and I did. And what I said was, it's broken and cannot be fixed by what you're doing now. And I reported that to the legislature, who summarily said, we don't like what you said, goodbye, and lost my job, truly. Came home. My wife, who was pregnant, said, oh my God. And I said, yes, but don't worry about it. I have a license to practice psychotherapy, and we're going to make it. And I taught at the university. I made $90,000 the year I was unemployed. I was so proud of that. And Jim Rhodes called me up, and he said, you know what you ought to do? You ought to do this yourself. You ought to provide services for people. You know how to do it, and I think you can do it. And I looked at my wife, and she was don't do this, please. We've got this baby who is now born, who's just sitting in the audience there. And she said, you're kidding. And I said, no, this is the time to do it. So I did it, and with a lot of good relationships, with a lot of good people who believed in what I did, we made it. And thanks to my family, and thanks to a lot of people who believed in me.
Bill, you're a similar example because you had a successful career and then took the plunge. What about for you? What was so motivating?
Well, I was relatively newly married and didn't have any kids, and I thought it was, if I was going to take a risk, that was the moment. And my perspective was that there are good times to do certain things in your life, and if I was ever going to go do anything entrepreneurial, that was my time before I started having a bunch of other obligations, before I got too old to go do it. And so I also thought, and this was an interesting one because it's about risk, is that I'd had a very good career for about 18 years and had a great track record. And my thinking was that if I screwed up big time, I could go right back to what I was doing with little difficulty. So, it was a calculated risk. That would be my description of it.
Michael, you strike me as a little bit of a different example, that even from the get-go when you were working for other people, that you kind of knew you always, at some point, were going to be launching on your own. Would that be accurate?
I don't know where you got this, but no, I am actually I'm a little different. I came from a different country, from Ukraine here, and I work as an engineer. So, and I work for a big company, and like other people here, I just hated it because of bureaucracy, and what struck me that management really didn't know anything about engineering. So I got sort of less and less patient at the point that I really couldn't stand anymore. And luckily I saw opportunity in the field of sort of owning, operating power plants. And I never thought about entrepreneur, and I didn't know what that word even meant. But I thought I just can do something on my own. And so I got to the point that I just quit. I didn't have any money, but I found a guy who said, I'll pay your salary, and we'll, basically I was behind the business, and I started and kind of worked out pretty good. And then I split with the guy, and I started another business which was even better. And same thing, owning, operating power plants. And then I sold that one in 2000 and 2001, and then I started a third one. And all three businesses I started from scratch, kind of organically growing every one, and it worked out pretty good. I guess in my case, I really did not know what this is all about. I mean, I came from a place where there was nothing. The entrepreneurial part was kind of do something against the government underground, so there was no sort of legitimate way of starting anything. But I don't know. I felt I knew what I was doing, in my field, and I thought, just like people here, I thought there was no downside. To go back to where I was doing, I could always do, but I had an opportunity to do something differently, and it worked out.
Mark, how about you? Was it, you were so young starting Lante, was it that you figured there's no downside?
No, I quit my job. So I actually had started off, all like through high school and stuff, building my own PCs and stuff. Did that in college, really loved it. Went to work for Arthur Anderson and Company, and I'd worked there through the summer, and then my first year, I went in for a review. I worked there through the summer, my senior year of college, and then for a year after that, went in for a review, and my manager told me that basically the only way I was going to get promoted was to work on a mainframe computer because, quote, the only thing a PC is good for is running terminal emulators that can connect to a mainframe. And I fundamentally disagreed with him. And so he's like, well, if you're going to get promoted, it's what you're going to have to do. So I said, I guess I'm going to have to quit. And so I quit, and then thought, what am I going to do? Because I couldn't really find, I wanted to work for a software company. I couldn't really find a software company in Chicago back in 1982. At that point, 84. And so I just started doing consulting, thinking I'll do that to keep myself busy until I figure out what I want to do. Basically, before I knew it, I had more work. I was selling during the day, working at night. Before I knew it, I needed another half-time person, then a full-time person, then another half-time person. And before I realized that I had like 4 or 5 employees, I'm like, I guess I really have a company here, and just kind of grew from there. And my theory was very simple. If you're going to have to work for a living, because I think like most people do, unless you happen to be, inherit like a huge amount of money or something, you're going to have to work. You might as well work doing things you really love to do. And for me, I loved figuring out how technology could help businesses. And I thought that would be a fun job, and it just kind of took off from there. And I did it for, directly or indirectly for about 20 years. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and then kind of sold it and thought I'm done. And then a friend of mine asked me to, help him turn around a business. And so I said, I don't know what we could do with this. I was helping my kids do homework. And I thought, they wanted to look some stuff up. And we went to Google like everyone else, and it bounced back and forth between the search results. And I realized this kind of sucks. There's got to be a better way to do it. And if it was like a word, you could look it up in a dictionary. It was a topic that happened to be in an encyclopedia. You could find an encyclopedia or an almanac, but you couldn't go to one spot that had like everything you wanted to know about it. So I'm like, wow, I think we could do this. So the next thing I know, I talked to a couple people about it. They said, yeah, there's really not. So then I went out and found out I could buy the domain answers.com. And I created a site called answers.com, which today, ComScore, which is another great Chicago company, identified it as the top 20th website in North America today, or this month. So, so a lot of people agree with me. I got 80 million people a month who come and look at the site and look stuff up all the time. So for me, it was really, if you love what you're doing, just do it. If you can make some money at it, all the better. And if you can do well with it, you're a happy camper. And so I'm all in all very happy.
And why not? We're going to get to that happy camper part in a little bit. Chris, we're going to fast forward with you a little bit because 3 IPOs, the first 2, in a way you could say predictable, IT related, and that's your bread and butter. But then the 3rd time around, you go for Rubicon, and all of a sudden we're into LEDs. What caused that right turn?
In the professional services business, anyone who's in it knows that no matter what kind of a business model you put together, you're going to need to basically resell the business at least once or twice a year. And it can be very trying to have to resell the business once or twice a year and grow it at 20 or 30%. So there had to be an easier business, and there was all this travel involved, and you had to ask hundreds of employees to leave on Mondays and come back on Fridays, and it was just painful. It was painful, and I'd been in the business for 25 years, and so something came along near the end of my involvement with Diamond that involved getting into high-tech manufacturing, and that was Rubicon, and the notion was to go up against Dow Chemical and GE and others. And in the previous businesses I've been involved with, all they really were is a change in the business model for professional services to compete with the Big 8, and to go to market and take business away from them. Well, Rubicon basically was about a business model and how to go to bat against the larger chemical, the larger material science companies. And so, but the draw was, in terms of changing from consulting to high-tech manufacturing, was that once you have a customer on a technology product that you're manufacturing, and there's a very specific specification for it, et cetera, it becomes this wonderful thing that entrepreneurs really love. It's called an annuity revenue. And I looked at the opportunity as, okay, great, now I don't have to resell the business every single year. And so that's why I pursued it. Now, the fact of the matter, though, is that all businesses are hard, and it just had different problems than the professional services business. But the draw was the potential of annuity revenues with customers.